Chapter 1. The Visit to Wuthering Heights. It was in the winter of 1801 that I visited Wuthering Heights and met my landlord, Mr. Heathcliff, for the first time. Wuthering Heights is a solid stone house that stands high on the Yorkshire moors. This is a very isolated part of England. Mr. Heathcliff was my nearest neighbor, so I was hoping we might become friends. When I arrived, I knocked at the door and a gentleman opened it. "Good day," I said. "I'm Mr. Lockwood, your new tenant." "Then you'd better come in," he said in an unfriendly voice. "I'm Heathcliff." I followed him into a simple sitting room. "I hope my presence at Thrushcross Grange doesn't cause you any trouble," I said. "Trouble?" he repeated. "Thrushcross Grange is mine, and I don't allow anyone to cause me trouble." 3 dogs lay on the floor in front of a huge fireplace. When they saw me, they began to growl quietly. "I'll bring some wine," said Mr. Heathcliff, going out of the room. I was left alone with the animals. One dog came very close to me, so I made a face at it, hoping to scare it away. But the dog jumped up at me. I managed to push it away and pulled a table between us, calling out, "Help! Mr. Heathcliff, come at once!" A servant heard me and rushed into the room. She shook her head and led the dogs back to the fire. I was sure that Mr. Heathcliff also heard the noise, but he didn't come back to help me. In fact, when he returned with the wine, there was a look of amusement in his eyes. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Your dogs," I replied. "They're wild, like tigers. How could you leave me alone with them?" "My dogs won't hurt you," he said. "Perhaps you touched something?" "Of course not," I replied. By now I was angry and ready to leave. I had seen enough of my strange landlord. "Sit down and have a glass of wine with me," he said in a softer tone. "Please sit down. You see, we seldom get visitors, so we don't know how to receive them." After he spoke more kindly, I sat down and he poured the wine. We had a very interesting conversation about farming and many other topics. Mr. Heathcliff seemed to be a very intelligent man, and also a gentleman. He was handsome, too, in a dark gypsy way. In spite of his moody manner, I decided that I would visit him again. Chapter 2. The Meal. 2 weeks later, I again walked over the moors to Wuthering Heights. It was a cold, gray day, and when I was almost there, it started to snow. I arrived at the house and knocked at the door, but no one answered. I knocked again, and an old man appeared at the side of the house. "What do you want?" he shouted. "No one's here. The master is in the fields." "Will no one open the door for me?" I asked. "Mrs. Heathcliff is inside, but she won't open the door for anyone," the man said, and he walked away. A few moments later, a young farm worker appeared. I asked him to let me into the house. "Follow me," he said. We walked around the house and entered through a back door. He led me into the sitting room. A young woman sat at the table, and I saw that a meal was set out. The woman looked at me but said nothing. Trying to be sociable, I said, "Very bad weather we're having." The young woman didn't reply but stared at me. She was very beautiful, but her miserable expression spoiled her looks. "Were you invited to eat with us?" she asked at last. "No, but I'll be happy to join you," I replied. "But were you invited?" she repeated. "No," I replied with a smile. "You are the one to invite me." She didn't reply. She looked away, and I saw that her eyes were filled with tears. The farm worker was also sitting at the table. His hands were dirty and his nails were black. What a trio we are, I thought to myself. A sad-looking woman, a common farmer, and me. No one said a word. I was sorry that I had come. At last Heathcliff entered the room. When he saw me, he stopped, stared, and said, You were foolish to go walking over the moors in a snowstorm. But it wasn't snowing when I set out, I said. It's snowing heavily now, he said, and there's no chance of a change. Are you going to make the tea? The farm worker asked the young woman. Is he going to have tea with us? She asked, pointing at me. Yes, he is. Get it ready, shouted Mr. Heathcliff. I felt quite unwelcome at this unpleasant tea table. However, the food was good, and I made another attempt at a little friendly conversation. This is a very tasty meal, I said, and I thank you, Mr. Heathcliff, and your good lady. My good lady, he cried with a wicked laugh. Where is my good lady? I was confused. Your wife? My wife is a ghost, Mr. Lockwood, he said. Gone long ago. I'm sorry, I said, realizing my mistake. Heathcliff was over 40, and this young woman was not yet 20. This woman is my daughter-in-law, Heathcliff said. As he said these words, he gave her a look that was full of hatred. Oh, I see, I said, turning to the young man that I thought was one of Heathcliff's workers. You must be the lovely lady's husband. This was even worse. The young man grew red and looked as if he wanted to hit me. You're not good at guessing games, Mr. Heathcliff said. He appeared to enjoy my embarrassment. This man is not the lady's husband. Her husband is dead. I told you that she is my daughter-in-law. Therefore, she was the wife of my son. And this young man? I asked. He's not my son, said Mr. Heathcliff. You can be sure of that. My name is Hareton Earnshaw, the young man said in an angry voice. No more was said. As soon as the meal was over, I rose and went to the window. I was upset to see a thick white blanket of snow on the ground. Chapter 3. The Ghost. I was in a difficult position. I didn't want to ask a favor from Mr. Heathcliff, but there was no alternative. I'm afraid I must ask for your help, Mr. Heathcliff, I said. It's dark, and I fear I'll get lost on the moors. Can one of your workers accompany me to the Grange? No, he replied. Turning to the young man, he continued. Hareton, come with me to make sure the sheep are inside. They'll die if they're outside at night in this weather. The two men disappeared, and I was left with the young woman. Is there no one here who can guide me back to the Grange? I asked. No, she answered. Turning away from me, she said, Go back the way you came. With these words of advice, she left the room. I didn't know what to do. I was looking out of the window when Mr. Heathcliff returned, shaking the snow from his black hair. I hope this will teach you not to make foolish journeys when the moors are covered in deep snow, he said. But Mr. Heathcliff, you can share a bed with Hareton, he said. I can sleep here, I said, pointing to a chair by the fire. No, a stranger is a stranger. I don't want you walking around the house while I'm asleep, he said as he left the room. I was very angry, but once again the servant, who told me her name was Zillah, appeared at the right moment. Follow me, she said, leading me up some stairs, and don't make a noise. The master doesn't use this room. Why not? I asked. I don't know, she replied, and I don't ask questions. Many strange things happen in this house. She took me into the room and showed me a bed beside a window. She left a candle on the table and again warned me to be very quiet. I got into bed, but I couldn't sleep. There were some old books on a shelf, and there were some names written on the shelf. Cathy Earnshaw, Cathy Heathcliff, and Cathy Linton. I wondered if these were the names of one person or three people. I was curious, so I opened one of the books and began reading its old yellow pages. January 5th, 1778. A horrible Sunday. Hindley was very cruel to Heathcliff, but we will fight back. It was raining hard and we couldn't go to church. Joseph kept H and me in the room for hours and hours. Joseph's lessons are boring and we were very cold. Hindley and his wife sat by the fire in the sitting room, but they wouldn't let us come in, so we decided to go to our special place on the moors. The next entry said, "Poor Heathcliff. Hindley insults him all the time. He calls him a gypsy and a beggar. He won't allow him to sit at the table with us anymore. He has to eat in the kitchen. Hindley says that if he sees us together, he'll throw Heathcliff out of the house. I hate my brother." I began to feel sleepy and put the book back on the shelf. I fell asleep, but it was not a peaceful sleep. What a terrible night. I had bad dreams and woke suddenly. There was a tapping noise at the window. At first it frightened me, then I realized that it must be the branch of a tree shaking in the wind. I couldn't sleep because of the noise. With difficulty, I managed to open the window, and horror of horrors, instead of a branch, my fingers closed on a little ice-cold hand. "Let me in," a voice cried. "Let me in." I was terrified. "Who are you?" I shouted as I struggled to free my hand. "Catherine Linton," the voice cried. "I lost my way on the moors." As she spoke, I saw a young woman with tears on her cheeks. "How can I let you in if you don't let me go?" I shouted. She released my hand, and as quickly as I could I shut the window and put the books against it. I covered my ears, but I could still hear her voice. "Go away!" I shouted. "I'll never let you in, even if you ask for 20 years. 20 years, the voice cried. "I've been lost on the moors for 20 years. "Go away!" I shouted. "Go away!" Then I heard a noise outside the door, and Heathcliff entered holding a candle. "Is anyone there?" he asked in a whisper. I looked at him. His face was white and his hand trembled. He was shaking with anger, or was it fear? When he saw me, he groaned. "Oh, God, who let you into this room?" "Your servant Zillah," I replied. "I suppose she wanted me to know that the place is full of ghosts. She's right." "What do you mean?" asked Heathcliff. "It's that girl, Catherine Linton. She told me she's been lost on the moors for 20 years. Heathcliff's reaction was frightening. "How dare you talk to me about her? You're mad," he said. "I read her name on the shelf," I said. I didn't want him to know that I'd also read the girl's book. "Take the candle and get out," he said in a choked voice as if he wanted to cry. I left the room, but stood for a few minutes outside not knowing where to go. I heard Heathcliff open the window and call out into the night, "Come in! My darling Cathy, come to me!" There was such pain in his voice that I felt very uncomfortable standing there. Quietly I went downstairs and sat on the chair by the fire. As soon as it was light, I left Wuthering Heights and made my way over the snowy moors to Thrushcross Grange. Chapter 4. The Gypsy Boy. After walking for hours through the snow, I was thankful to see my home again. Nellie Dean, my housekeeper, opened the door. "Mr. Lockwood, are you all right?" she asked. "No," I replied. "I don't feel very well." "You're very pale, sir," she said. "Sit by the fire and I'll bring you some hot soup." I did as she said. When she returned with the soup, I started telling her about my visit to Wuthering Heights. "Tell me, Nellie, you used to work for that family, didn't you?" I asked. "Yes, I did," she replied. "I worked there for many years." "So you must know a lot about the people who live there," I said. "What can you tell me about my landlord, Mr. Heathcliff?" "Heathcliff?" she repeated. "It's a long story, Mr. Lockwood, and an interesting one. If you want to hear it, I'll sit down and tell you." "I would like that, Nellie," I said. So each night after dinner, Nellie and I sat down by the fire, and she told me the story of the people at Wuthering Heights.
It all began 30 years ago. That's when I started working for the Earnshaw family at Wuthering Heights. I was a young woman at the time. The Earnshaws were good people and very kind to me. I felt more like one of the family than a servant. They had 2 children, a son and a daughter. At that time, Hindley was 14 years old and Kathy was 6. Hindley was at a difficult age, and I think he was jealous of his little sister. Kathy was a mischievous child, but she had a pretty face and a sweet smile. You couldn't be angry with her. Mr. Earnshaw used to go to Liverpool several times a year on business. When he went away, we missed his cheerful presence, but there was always a compensation. He brought us nice presents. "What will I bring you this time, Hindley?" Mr. Earnshaw asked on one occasion. "A fiddle, father," the boy replied. "I've always wanted a fiddle." "An excellent idea," said Mr. Earnshaw. "You'll play the fiddle and Kathy will dance for us." Turning to his daughter, he asked, "And what shall I bring you?" "A whip for my new pony," she answered. Even at 6 years old, Kathy could ride any pony in the stable. "And Nellie," he said, "I'll bring you some nice apples and pears." 3 days later, when Mr. Earnshaw returned, his wife and children ran to meet him. But he said, "Stand back! What a walk I've had, the worst of my life! He struggled with me all the way." "What do you mean?" asked his wife. "I'll show you," he said, opening his coat. "Here's a surprise for you." In front of us stood a dirty, black-haired child. He was thin and dressed in rags. He stood silently, his eyes on the floor. Mrs. Earnshaw was the first to speak. "Who is this? What is this? How can you do this to us?" she asked in an angry voice. "How can you bring a dirty gypsy into our home? We have our own children to feed." "Take him as a gift from God," her husband said. "I saw this poor boy in a doorway in Liverpool, shivering from cold and hunger. I asked people nearby if he had a home, a mother, a father. No one knew who he was or where he came from. I couldn't leave him there to die, could I?" Mrs. Earnshaw didn't reply, but with a cry she turned her back and ran upstairs to her room. Joseph, the Earnshaw's manservant, was an ill-humored person. He was always praying and reading the Bible. He stared at the child and said, "He's as dark as if he came from the devil." Then he turned and left the room. Hindley suddenly remembered his present. "What about my fiddle, father?" he asked. From a pocket, Mr. Earnshaw pulled out some bits of wood and string. The fiddle was broken beyond repair. Hindley's face was dark with anger. "That gypsy broke it." "Don't talk like that," said Mr. Earnshaw. "And my whip?" asked Kathy. "Where's my whip?" "I'm sorry, Kathy, but I lost it," her father said. Kathy replied by making faces at the boy. For this, her father smacked her. "Don't behave like this," Mr. Earnshaw shouted at his children. Hindley and Kathy didn't say anything, but ran upstairs to their room. The 3 of us, Mr. Earnshaw, the boy, and me, were left downstairs. My master sat down at the table and put his hands over his eyes. "I thought we were a kind family," he said. "Nellie, I am tired, so tired. Please bring me something hot to drink, and take the boy to the kitchen. Wash him from head to toe, and give him some food. The poor child is starving." "Certainly, sir," I replied. It hurt me to see my master so upset. "Then get him some clean clothes," Mr. Earnshaw continued wearily, "and put him in the little bed in the children's room." The boy followed me into the kitchen. I feared he would be difficult, but he was quiet and obedient. I gave him a basin of water, soap, and towels, and then I prepared some hot food for Mr. Earnshaw. When the child had finished washing himself, I checked that he was clean and gave him some of Hindley's old clothes. I told him to sit at the table, and I put a plate of bread and butter, a piece of cheese, and a jug of milk in front of him. All this time he hadn't made a sound. Perhaps he is an imbecile, I thought, or a deaf mute. When Mr. Earnshaw finished eating, he said, "Thank you, Nellie. I'll go to bed now. Good night." I finished clearing the table and returned to the kitchen. The boy had finished everything. Then, to my surprise, he said in a low voice, "Thank you, Nellie." So the boy could speak, and he was intelligent enough to remember my name. That was a beginning. With a candle in my hand, I took the boy quietly upstairs. When we entered the children's room, they both shouted, "Take him away! We don't want a dirty gypsy in our room." I was afraid the noise would disturb Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw, so I took some blankets and made a bed for the child on the floor outside the children's room. He lay down without a sound, and I left him there. I was very tired from all the unexpected excitement, and very happy to go to bed. However, I couldn't fall asleep. I thought about Mr. Earnshaw. How could he bring a strange child into the house? Was my master too kind-hearted? Perhaps in the morning the boy would be gone, and our lives would continue as usual. With these thoughts in my head, I fell asleep. Joseph and I were always the first to get up in the morning. He lit the fire and fed the cows, and I got milk to make the breakfast. Before going to the cowshed, I ran upstairs to see if the boy was there. He was gone. At that moment, Joseph was bringing in wood for the fire. I asked him, "Did you see the boy this morning?" "I did," he replied. "And do you know where the little devil was sleeping? Like a dog outside the master's bedroom." "Where is he now?" I asked. "What did you do?" "I kicked him down the stairs and threw him into the stable with the animals, where he belongs," Joseph said. "And I gave him some work to do. We don't need parasites here." I didn't reply because I knew it was useless to talk to Joseph. When I had a moment, I ran outside. The boy was there, sweeping the yard with a broom taller than he was. I saw the bruises on his face and arms. He worked silently, his eyes on the ground. A few days later, Mr. Earnshaw christened the boy Heathcliff. That was the name of a son the Earnshaws had had, a son who had died as a baby. Mr. Earnshaw wrote the date in the family Bible. Heathcliff came to Wuthering Heights, April 10th, 1771. That is a date I shall always remember. After Heathcliff came to us, all our lives changed. Chapter 5. Hindley's Hatred. From the moment Heathcliff entered the Earnshaw family, there was trouble. I never understood why my master liked the boy so much. It was clear to us all that Mr. Earnshaw even preferred Heathcliff to his own son. After a few weeks, Cathy and Heathcliff became friends. She was the only one who could bring a smile to his dark face. Whenever they could, they'd run to a special place they had found on the moors. There were some huge stones there that stood in a square like an old castle. Heathcliff and Cathy pretended it was their palace. In their favorite game, Cathy was a princess, and Heathcliff her servant, and he did everything she asked him to do. My mistress, Mrs. Earnshaw, was ill, and spent most days in bed. I don't think she ever forgave her husband for bringing Heathcliff into the family. 2 years after the boy came to live with us, Mrs. Earnshaw died in her sleep. We were all very sad. In contrast to his sister, Hindley never liked Heathcliff. I often found the boys fighting with each other and calling each other names. When Mr. Earnshaw saw how the boys hated each other, he was very upset. But he continued to favor Heathcliff, and this angered Hindley even more. One day the rector, who came to tutor the children, made a suggestion to Mr. Earnshaw. "Hindley is nearly 16, and he's not learning the subjects he needs. Why don't you send him to a boarding school?" Both Hindley and his father liked the idea, and a few weeks later, Hindley left us to study at a boarding school in the south of England. I was hoping we'd have a more peaceful time after Hindley left us. I was right. This peaceful period lasted for 4 years. Heathcliff was growing into a strong boy, and he worked hard on the farm, looking after the animals. When he and Kathy were together, she taught him what she had learned from her daily lessons with the rector. Heathcliff was naturally intelligent and wanted to learn. Mr. Earnshaw was getting old now. He spent most of the day sleeping in his chair by the fire, his dogs at his side. One evening, with Heathcliff sitting on the floor at his feet, and Kathy singing to him, the old man died peacefully. Kathy and Heathcliff were heartbroken. They comforted each other as if they really were brother and sister. Hindley returned for his father's funeral and surprised us all. He brought a wife with him. Hindley was nearly 20, and his wife, Frances, was 1 year younger. She was a pretty woman, but she was nervous and cried easily. Mr. Earnshaw's funeral upset her very much. "I'm afraid of death and dying," she said to me in a tearful voice. "It comes to us all," I replied. "But you're young and healthy. Don't think about it." After the funeral, Frances was happy to get to know her pretty young sister-in-law. She and Kathy spent a lot of time combing each other's hair and trying on clothes. It was good to hear the sound of laughter in the house again. I was hoping that Hindley and Heathcliff would be more civil to each other. They were both older, and Hindley was now a married man. However, Hindley hated Heathcliff more than ever. Now that Mr. Earnshaw couldn't protect Heathcliff, Hindley showed no mercy. He was now the master of the house, and he wanted everyone, especially Heathcliff, to know it. "He shall eat in the kitchen and sleep in the stable," Hindley said. "If I see him in any other part of the house, I'll send him away." Kathy was very upset when she heard her brother talk like this, but she and Heathcliff still found ways to be together. Frances was expecting a child at this time and was feeling very tired and weak. She and Hindley usually went to their room after the evening meal. When they had gone upstairs, Kathy and Heathcliff used to run to their special place on the moors. They always returned by 10 o'clock, Kathy's bedtime. One night, though, it was after 11, and they hadn't come back. I was worried. Joseph was sitting by the fire reading the Bible. He looked up and said, "Those two need discipline. Heathcliff is a bad influence on Kathy." In my heart, I agreed with Joseph, but I didn't reply. "It's after 11 o'clock and they're not home," he continued. "They're wild. They have no respect for anyone at all." "Go to bed, Joseph," I said. "I'll wait for them and lock the doors." "Wait till I tell Hindley," Joseph said. "Heathcliff needs a beating for this." "Go to bed, Joseph, and let things be." After midnight, Heathcliff returned alone. "Where is she?" I asked. "Where's my mistress?" "She's safe," Heathcliff replied. "But we had a little accident." "What do you mean?" "Kathy and I walked to Thrushcross Grange, and we climbed the wall to look into the Linton sitting room. They heard us and sent their dogs to catch us. Poor Kathy was bitten on her foot." "Oh my goodness! Is she badly hurt?" I asked. "There was a lot of blood," Heathcliff replied. "I wanted to stay with her, but they told me to come back here." "I'm not surprised. Heathcliff, you're in trouble now. What a foolish thing to do. Why did you go to the Grange?" "We wanted to see how the Lintons spend their Sunday evenings. Their drawing room is beautiful, with red carpets and fine tables and chairs. The parents weren't there, but the 2 children were." "The brother and sister we see at church?" "Yes, Isabella and Edgar," Heathcliff said. Do you know what those stupid children were doing? They were fighting over a dog. Each one was pulling at it. It was so funny that we laughed, and that's when they heard us. They sent their dogs to attack us because they thought we were thieves. Then their servants took us into the house. When they saw me, they called me a beggar and a gypsy and sent me out of their house. I stayed outside and looked through the window. I wanted to see if Kathy was all right. I really wanted to break their window. "Hush, Heathcliff," I said. "The Lintons are good people." "You're right, Nellie. They were horrible to me, but they were nice to Kathy. They carried her to a sofa and then washed her foot and put a bandage on it." The poor girl! Then they stood and looked at her. "Kathy's beautiful, isn't she, Nellie? She's the most beautiful girl in the world." "That's enough, Heathcliff," I said. "Do you know what time it is? Go to bed now. You'll be punished when Hindley hears about this." "I'm not afraid of Hindley," he said. Chapter 6. Thrushcross Grange. Early the next morning, Mr. Linton visited Hindley and told him that Kathy was feeling better. "I called Dr. Kenneth and he came straight away," Mr. Linton told Hindley. "He said that she mustn't move until her foot heals. She can stay with us till she's better." "That is very good of you, Mr. Linton," said Hindley. "It's a pleasure," Mr. Linton said with a smile. "Edgar and Isabella are delighted, and so are my wife and I." "We are very grateful to you." "Oh, no! The Earnshaws and the Lintons have been good neighbors for generations. I'm glad we can be helpful at a time like this." Lowering his voice, he continued, "There is one small matter, if you don't mind." "What is it, Mr. Linton?" "We don't want to see that gypsy boy at the Grange," Mr. Linton said. "I hope you understand. He was rude to my wife and servants." "Of course," Hindley said. "I give you my word that Heathcliff will not go near the Grange again." Kathy was at Thrushcross Grange for 5 weeks. When she returned home, she was transformed. Her hair was beautifully combed. She wore a blue silk dress, and she spoke more politely. Kathy was a lady. When Hindley and Frances saw her, they were delighted. Kathy looked around and asked, "Where's Heathcliff?" Hindley turned to Heathcliff, who was standing outside the door, and said, "Heathcliff, you may welcome Miss Kathy like the other servants." But Kathy didn't listen to her brother. She ran up to Heathcliff and gave him 7 or 8 quick kisses on his cheek. Then she stopped, looked at him, and started to laugh. "Heathcliff," she said, "you look so angry. Have you forgotten me?" "Shake hands, Heathcliff," said Hindley. "That is allowed." "I shall not," replied Heathcliff angrily, "and I won't be laughed at." "Heathcliff, I didn't mean to laugh at you," Kathy said. "But you look so dirty. If you wash your face and comb your hair—" "You don't have to touch me," Heathcliff said. "I'll be as dirty as I want." Having said that, he ran out of the room. Heathcliff didn't appear until the following evening. I was working in the kitchen when he entered. "Nellie, will you help me?" he asked. "What do you want?" "I want to be good and clean for Kathy," he said. "You upset her yesterday when you ran away," I said. "She upset me too," he said. "You made her cry." "That's good," he said. "I cried too, Nellie." "All right. I'll help you to be a gentleman, Heathcliff. You'll be even finer than Edgar Linton." "Will you, Nellie?" he asked. "I know I'm taller and stronger than he is, but I'll never have fair hair or white skin like he has." "Heathcliff," I said, "when you smile, you're very handsome. You may be a prince. Perhaps you were stolen from a king's palace, taken to Liverpool, and then left there for Mr. Earnshaw to find you." Heathcliff smiled. "I like that," he said. I was pleased that Heathcliff was talking sense, and I had hopes that he would become more gentle. I gave him a comb and said, Now go and comb your hair." At that moment, Hindley and Francis entered with Isabella and Edgar. They had come from the Grange to visit Cathy. When Hindley saw Heathcliff with a comb in his hand, he pushed him and said, "Get out of here!" Turning to Edgar, he said, "Look at him, combing his hair." "It's long enough already," said Edgar, who was standing in the doorway. "He looks like a horse." That insult was too much for Heathcliff. He picked up a glass from the table and threw it at Edgar. It missed his head by inches. Edgar turned pale and looked as if he were going to cry. Hindley dragged Heathcliff upstairs, hitting him all the way. "You beggar!" he shouted. "I curse the day my father brought you to this house." He threw Heathcliff into one of the rooms and locked the door. Late that night, Hindley told me to unlock the door and let Heathcliff out. Heathcliff came and sat in the kitchen. He looked ill and didn't want to eat anything. He sat staring into the fire. "What are you thinking about?" I asked him. "Revenge," he replied. "One day I'll get my revenge on Hindley. I don't care how long it takes me. I only hope he doesn't die before I do." "Heathcliff!" I exclaimed. "What terrible words! Don't talk like that. We must learn to forgive people, not punish them." Heathcliff gave me an angry look and said, "Nellie Dean, you don't understand me at all." Chapter 7. Heathcliff Disappears. The following summer, Francis and Hindley had a little boy. He was a lovely baby, and they called him Hareton. For a short while, there was happiness at Wuthering Heights, but it didn't last long. Francis, who had always been physically weak, never recovered from the birth, and when the baby was 4 months old, she died. Hindley was devastated. His wife's death was a terrible shock to him and to all of us. After this, Hindley began drinking and was often violent. I had to protect the baby and keep him out of his father's sight. Hindley never loved his son as a father should. Perhaps he blamed the child for his mother's death. The atmosphere at Wuthering Heights was terrible. Hindley continued to hate Heathcliff, but he needed him on the farm because Heathcliff did the work of 3 men. Edgar Linton wanted to visit Cathy, but he was afraid to come to Wuthering Heights because he did not want to see Heathcliff. So in the afternoons, Cathy and I often walked over the moors to the Grange instead. As we were returning from one of these visits, Heathcliff met us. When he saw us, his face was like thunder. He knew we had been to visit Edgar, and he was afraid of losing Cathy, his best and only friend. He was also jealous of Edgar. As the days passed, he became more and more bitter and moody. One afternoon, Cathy came into the kitchen looking worried. "Nellie, are you alone?" "Yes," I replied, "except for little Hareton, but he's asleep." "Where's Heathcliff?" she asked. "Working, I suppose," I replied. "Nellie, can you keep a secret?" "Of course, Cathy." "Edgar Linton has asked me to marry him," she said, "and I've given him my answer." "Have you accepted him?" I asked. "I don't want to tell you," she said. "I want you to tell me if I gave the right or wrong answer." "How do I know?" I asked. "Do you love Edgar Linton?" "Of course I do," she replied. "Tell me why you love him," I asked her. "Because he's young and handsome, and he loves me. And one day he'll be very rich, and I'll be the richest lady in the district." "Those aren't good reasons," I said. "He won't always be young and handsome, and he may not always be rich." "Of course he will, Nellie," she said. "And it's important for me to be a rich woman." "So why are you asking me, Cathy? You already seem to know what you want. Where's the problem?" "Here and here," she said, putting one hand on her forehead and one on her heart. "With my head, I love Edgar. But with my heart, oh, Nellie, I had a dream. I dreamed I was in heaven, but I was very unhappy there. I cried and cried, and God became angry with me. Then I found myself walking on the moors. I was lost, desolate. I was looking for Heathcliff. But you see, it would be a disaster for me to marry Heathcliff. It would degrade me. As Cathy was speaking, I noticed a slight movement at the door, and I saw Heathcliff stand up and go quietly outside. "Cathy, hush! Don't hush me. I must speak to someone," she said. "You see, I love Heathcliff more than I'll ever love Edgar. My soul and Heathcliff's are one." "So why do you want to marry Edgar? If you marry Edgar Linton, you and Heathcliff will be separated forever." "Oh, no, we won't," she exclaimed. "Who will separate us? I wouldn't tolerate that. No, Edgar will accept Heathcliff, and if I'm rich, I can help him." "What, with your husband's money?" I said. "That is the worst reason in the world for marrying Edgar." "No, Nellie, it is the best," she said. "Heathcliff is right here, in my heart, my soul. I am Heathcliff." "You're not ready to marry anyone, my girl," I said, "and I've heard enough nonsense for one day." At that moment, the baby began to cry. Cathy went to him and picked him up. "Hold the baby till I warm his food," I said. "You know, Cathy, I think Heathcliff heard some of your talk." "What do you mean?" she asked. "I thought you said he was in the fields." "I thought he was, but I saw him go out while you were talking." "I hope you're wrong, Nellie." Heathcliff didn't appear for the evening meal, and Cathy went out to look for him. It was a cold evening, and dark clouds were gathering over the moors. It began to rain, and I knew that Cathy was wearing a light dress, so I took her coat and went to look for her. She was standing by the stables in the pouring rain, crying, "Heathcliff! Heathcliff!" again and again. I took her back to the house. Then I dried her hair and made her change her clothes, but she refused to go to bed. She sat by the fire, tears running down her face. At midnight I left her, hoping that if she were on her own, she'd calm down a little. The next morning she had a fever and she was still crying. Suddenly she began to scream hysterically. I ran to Hindley and told him that we had to bring Dr. Kenneth to see her. 2 hours later, the doctor came and examined her. He gave her some medicine and told us that she was dangerously ill and that he was worried about the state of her mind. For the next 4 weeks, Cathy stayed in bed. As for Heathcliff, since the day of the storm, no one had seen him. Chapter 8. Heathcliff returns. During the weeks of Cathy's illness, Edgar's mother often came to visit us. When Cathy was better, Mrs. Linton suggested taking her to Thrushcross Grange. It was Cathy's 17th birthday, and they planned to have a party for her. Hindley thought the change would be good for her, and so did I. Thrushcross Grange, with its quiet atmosphere, had a good effect on Cathy. She became stronger, and on my weekly visits I was happy to see her with a smile on her face and color on her cheeks. She enjoyed Edgar's constant attention. He did everything he could to please her. It was clear that Edgar was in love with Cathy and wanted to marry her. One day I was hanging out the washing at Wuthering Heights, while Hareton played beside me. He was a big, strong 5-year-old, and I loved him dearly. Suddenly, Hindley came out of the house. "Nellie," he said, "I want to talk to you." "What about?" I asked. "I want you to go and stay with Cathy at the Grange." "But why?" I asked in alarm. "What about Hareton? Who will take care of him?" "Joseph and I," he said. "I don't want any women in the house. He's my son, and you spoil him too much." I was very upset. I'd cared for Hareton since he was a baby, and I didn't want to leave him. But Hindley was my master, and I had to do as he told me. Hareton and I both cried when I left. I promised him that I'd visit him every week. The day I left Wuthering Heights to go and live at the Grange was one of the saddest of my life. Life at Thrushcross Grange was quiet and orderly. Cathy was happy to have me with her again, and I was glad that she never mentioned Heathcliff. She seemed more mature now, and I thought she had made the wise decision to forget him. At this time, there was an epidemic of influenza in the district, and Edgar's parents became ill. After a short time, they both died within days of one another. Edgar was now the master of Thrushcross Grange. On the 1st day of June, 1783, he and Cathy were married in Gimmerton Church. Edgar was 20 years old, and Cathy 2 years younger. In all my days, I had never seen a happier-looking couple. After the ceremony, all the local people were invited to the Grange for a wedding feast. This was a happy time for us all, a time of peace and tranquility. But one day, 6 months after the wedding, everything changed. Edgar and Cathy were in the sitting room, and I was preparing the table for tea, when one of the servants entered and said, "A man from Gimmerton wants to see you, Mrs. Linton." "Who is he? What does he want?" Cathy asked. "I don't know," the servant said. "He says he wants to see you, that's all." "All right, I'm coming," Cathy said. "I'll be back in a moment." About 5 minutes later, she rushed in, her face pink and her eyes shining. "Edgar, he's back!" she exclaimed. "Heathcliff is back! He's here!" With these words, she threw her arms around her husband's neck. "Isn't it wonderful?" "Well, well," Edgar said. "I wonder what the gypsy wants." "Edgar," she said, moving away from him, "you mustn't use words like that. You two must be friends now, for me. Shall I ask him to come in?" "Here? Into the sitting room?" Edgar asked. "Why not?" "In the kitchen, perhaps." Cathy started to laugh. "Then I'll sit with him in the kitchen,"